Hello everyone and welcome to Legendary Games. In this interview episode of our show, we are thrilled to welcome Mr. Larry Harris Jr. He designed over 200 board games in his career, which lasts for several decades already. He's the author of the beloved Axis and Allies franchise, a best-selling timeless classic on which we will focus today. It is one of the most beloved and most influential wargames of all time. His latest magnum opus was War Room, a game he worked on for more than 5 years until it was completed in 2019. We will come to that back later. But first of all, glad to have you here on our show, Mr. Harris.
Good, wie geht's?
Oh, your German is pretty good.
That's about the extent of my German. But the little bit I do know is pretty good. That's good.
Yeah, most of the people know how to curse in German, but they do not know the polite way to introduce themselves. So we already have a good start.
Yeah,
well,
I spent a little bit of time in Germany when I was in the military, and it was enjoyable. I like Germany a lot, and I like the Germans a lot. So, and you obviously German history is always has played a big role in my design career. What with Germany being Darth Vader all the time.
Well, we had our ups and downs, so
yeah, it was of course a very sad history,
absolutely.
But it is an amazing story, and yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we are happy that you're here on our show. So today we are going to do the interview together with Sasha.
Hello, everyone.
And with my brother Alexander.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Mr. Harris. Very welcome.
Hello.
And they are kind of supporting me, asking several questions. And I'll have to admit that I'm not the most skilled and strongest Axis and Allies player. I might be the most passionate out of this group, but I know that Alexander is very deep into details, asking skill questions about tactics and everything. So that might be coming back to you as well, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, well, don't get your hopes up too high, but go
ahead. Well, first of all, we are going to go back in time to your youth. So you were in a family that played a lot, or did you come to the playgrounds or to the playing later on after your teenage years or in a grown-up adult stage?
Funny, yeah. I was always the new kid. We moved around a lot. We were a military family. My father was in the military. And so to make and have friends was something, was a bit of a luxury. So I used to find myself having to amuse myself a lot. And in so doing, I had to start designing or making situations that would stimulate my interest. And that was war and strategy and tactics, military things. The military was all around me, being an Army dependent. So the military played a big role in my life. And so I had started making military simulations from historical situations. I found myself at a very young age knowing that I could start at the historic moment and then change that history by simply sending maybe my cavalry off to the left instead of the right, or some other decision or that varied from history could make for an enjoyable thing. And then I had to measure these things. I had to see how far they could travel in a certain amount of time. I had to measure their offensive and defensive capabilities and how they compared against each other. And that set it all up for what would become my interest in designing war games.
So you had always the question, what if?
I did, or take it from here, or how would I have done it? So there you are, yeah. And so I set up these scenarios. Axis and Allies is certainly the classic setup, 1942, high water mark of the Axis expansion. That was all to make the game as equal or competitively equal as could be, so that one side didn't necessarily just always win. So you look for all these little advantages. For example, you start at the Axis high water mark, bringing them closer together. Then you go off into if you can cut this, my mind is going off in a different direction as I'm trying to talk to you.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Fine.
We're just listening excitedly.
If you could launch me again on whatever it was we were talking about.
Well,
Go
we were
ahead.
talking about alternate history, and we were talking about your family, and you said making friends is most easiest with board games. So what kind of board games came up in your youth? What kind of board games did you play from
but thank you.
other people?
That's not what I said. I said it was hard to make friends, so I had to entertain myself, if you recall. And so then I had to make competitive situations for myself. And
I have a question on this.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty exciting. So you're saying you did this when you were very young.
Yeah.
So so if I would imagine being in the situation today, there are all sorts of games or like blueprints of games how you could do something like that. But back in the days, I think you would have to start from scratch, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there was nothing out there. Risk came along. It caught my imagination. It was a military situation. The rules were not complicated. They weren't these war games for adults. They kind of appealed to my 12-year-old age, and so I felt comfortable going in that. Whereas the Avalon Hill games were for older kids and kids who were smarter than me. So yeah.
Maybe nerdier. Because I know about Avalon Hill games, there's always the exception of the exception, and you'll have to check every square and every hex if you can move to somewhere, and there's this rule and that rule.
Yes, that bothered me a lot. In fact, that was inspiration. The story I always tell is I was living in France, and I went to a flea market and a marché pousse, and there I found a game of Third Reich, which is an Avalon Hill game, and I was very excited about it, and I ran home with it, and I have never seen a game like this before, so it was all brand new, and I opened it up, and I was imagining myself to be playing this World War II simulation game that evening. I couldn't get off the first chapter in the rule book that evening. It was just impossible for me to follow, and I said to myself, there is a will on my part to play this game, and I'll bet there are a lot of other people, but we just can't play with these kind of rules. We need something that's a little bit more forgiving and easy.
I have a funny anecdote of our family to your Third Reich game, because I told you I'm buying the GMT games in the pre-talk, and we bought the successor of Third Reich, and the rules are so insane. It's called A World at War, that no one ever plays it. There are no games recorded on Board Game Geek, maybe one game a year. And my brother he's always the guy who's into details in rules. So I'm more the guy, like you describe him. I need clear, streamlined rules, but he is always going for the exception. And he says this rule set is a nightmare. And we couldn't play it outside of the tutorial scenario where you are in North Africa. So.
Yeah, this is true. So Larry, I can exactly get your feelings about what you had when you were seeing the Third Reich game at first, because Dominic was playing this game called A World at War. I don't know if you know it, and I think that the rule book weighs about 2 or 3 kilograms, like, and but it doesn't really, but it feels like that. And I tried for days, and I tried for weeks just to get into the easier chapters, which just allow you to play like, the most easy scenario to play. We tried it once, and we maybe just covered 5% of the rules, but I could never imagine how much time you had to spend just to play this game, apart from playing
The
it
funny
well,
thing
of
is,
course.
it might be a good game, but the problem is that it's written in such a bad way, the rules, that you cannot play it. It's impossible, in my opinion. And there's no tutorial on YouTube for years now, so it has sold badly, pretty much, and there are no people who are able to play it. But you can see that if you are talking to the designer directly, he might explain it to you, and it might be a great game, but as an outstanding third person, you do not have that option normally, so the game makes no sense, in my opinion. And I always was admiring when I bought like the revised version of Axis and Allies, or the Pacific or Europe part, that your rule books are very clear. And also in your in your latest game, War Room, the people praise that it's has a lot of mechanics, but they are clear to see, and that was always a strength of your games. But I'm already in the future of asking our questions, so that's our story about Third Reich.
Yeah, and Third Reich. Let's not pick on just Third Reich. It was symbolic of the games of that type.
Yeah.
They were all pretty much that way. It wasn't just Third Reich, but Third Reich was my exposure, and it opened my eyes. And I started thinking, I want to design games. If no one's doing it, I'll do it for myself. That are simple, and it's intentionally designed to be simple. And the return on my intellectual investment is not going to be questioned. It's going to be rewarded by if the game gives back more than it requires. But Third Reich was asking me to give more than it gave back, in my opinion.
So did you ever? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
So did you ever manage to play it, or
Third
start
Reich?
or a game like Third Reich in the end?
No, I immediately started changing it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's
House rules.
Right.
I
No,
can
but
imagine
there
that.
were other. But I played D-Day in the Avalon Hill. I played D-Day. I played Waterloo. There was a bunch of those that I really liked. Waterloo, particularly. Anyway, so I think it's for the designer to keep things simple and not detract from the experience.
Well, I agree. If you're having a game that everybody can understand, it makes much more sense, because you can attract people to the game who normally do not get into board games, or they normally step back from it because they know, okay, in the past we had so complicated rules, we just played once or twice, and they are not willing to learn those kind of games.
Yeah.
Well, so Alex, you had a question about a particular game.
Maybe first, can you tell us about the step from designing games for entertaining yourself to designing games maybe with the intent to sell it one day?
Great question. I was living in France. Someone asked me to do, because I could draw a little bit, and I was asked to work for this newspaper for a weekend to fill in for him and design a board game for children. And what I did was I came up with a board game, which later on got published. It was called Broadsides and Boarding Parties. But I did it for a weekend newspaper and for children, and in France. And it had a good reaction, and it was very encouraging to me, and it kind of revealed to me a little talent a little area, a business area that I could apply myself. Perhaps maybe I had some natural talents in that area. So by way of that, I discovered by that job opportunity that I had this talent, and then I just started designing. And I was always interested in World War II, and being in Europe, it was interesting to just walk around the streets. You could see bullet holes in the buildings from stuff that happened some 20, 30 years earlier, depending on the years I was there. So it was a good environment for something like Axis and Allies to be born.
Okay, well, Sasha, do you have a question? Otherwise, I will continue.
Not now. I will get in a little bit later.
So you started as an amateur, and it was kind of coincidental that you were asked to design it for the newspaper, and then you joined the military service. And I think was it kind of the inspiration of your following your father's footsteps, or was it like this kind of is part of adventure, growing up, earning good money, being a pilot is also something which is likely attracting younger people? So was that kind of a pause for the board gaming career at that moment, because you had no career because you just signed one game for the newspaper? That was kind of a coincidence in that part. It sounds to me like this. Or how old have you been there when you designed it?
I was living in France, and I walked into a publisher in Paris. It was it'll remain nameless for the moment. And anyway, so I walked in and I asked for R&D, research and development, and somebody with the way I did it and with my American accent and everything, I must be coming from the United States on business. So I was directed right upstairs into this meeting, and I walk in through the door, and there's this big round table full of the company's executives discussing their product line and other, game business. And I walk in, and I say, because I knew I had a name of someone I wanted to see, and I said, is there Mr. Thibault here? and of course, he was the guy at the head of the table down at the end. And everybody said, who are you? I'm Larry Harris. And as if, don't you know who I am?
I like today.
The secretary jumps up and she says, can I help you? Do you have an appointment? And I say, no, I don't have an appointment. I'm just looking for Mr. Thibault. I was told he was up here. She said, what would you like? And I said, I'd like to present a game idea I have. and so she said, well, will you please follow me? And she escorted me out of the room. And as I was leaving, the whole place broke into laughter because everyone understood the confusion.
But you took the shortcut.
And I made an impression. So they definitely wanted to see who this young American was with this box under his arm.
So what kind of game did you propose to him?
I proposed to him Axis and Allies.
Okay.
I see. And how long was it before it was published? Because the first entry on Board Game Geek is 1981. So how long did you cover that box behind under your arm? Because we talked to another game designer. He said he was kind of asking 3 years for anyone to look at the game, and no one had shown interest. And years later, it was a million seller called SimCity. You might know it from the computers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do. And so, I don't know. I have if I show you a prototype of that, can you see it?
Well, I'm not sure. If you share the screen with the picture, it could be, yes, that we see it.
I'll show you the box that I had that day.
Oh,
Okay.
great.
Yeah, cool.
That's great.
It wasn't called Axis and Allies.
Yeah.
It was called 1942.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's an obvious name for it because that's the starting scenario.
Yes.
And
So
this is the original box you were carrying back in the day.
Yeah, this is what I walked into that big meeting with.
but it
Wow.
looks pretty stylish even from today. You
That
have
might be worth
something
$1 million
like a you have a blurring effect, so we cannot see everything in detail.
I'll go slow. I'll go slow. So this was the map.
Wow.
Hand drawn.
Hand drawn, of course. No computers, no Photoshop.
This is
Well,
exciting.
So,
Hey, this is when men were men.
but you have a clever design to unfold the map and to fold it, because
Oh yeah, well, the clever.
because some games drive
clever in that I
drive
wanted
me
to
insane.
put this nice box. That's all. But this is what I really want to show you is, and I don't know if I can with any justice, but let's see. I will grab the camera here.
Yeah.
If I can, and these are little pieces that I made. Can you see that?
The problem is that you have something like a blurring effect on your camera, and you'll have to. I can see money and I can see some coins, but I cannot see it in detail. Ah, okay. So you were orientated on the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These are risk-like pieces.
That's the risk 5 and the risk 10 and the risk 1, and then you
No,
can see
no,
the
no,
ships.
no. This is nothing to do with risk. No. I made three dimensional objects like ships and planes.
Yeah, the ships I saw, but there was something like a cross, and the cross was in our old.
Oh, those
classic
are
risk.
infantry. Those are a cross. Yeah, that was well, actually.
It's difficult to show. If you can send us some pictures after the interview, that would be amazing. So
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Anyway, so then after I interrupted that meeting, they did see me, and I got to know the president of the company, and he said to me eventually, he said, 1942. It's not. It doesn't have good memories for the French people. We were, after all, occupied, and the war was not that long ago. And so he said, "Can you do something with these game mechanics?" And but in another time period. And
you'll have to adjust your camera again, please.
Adjust it
just a bit.
Yeah, absolutely
perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is that it? Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Sehr gut.
Supi.
Good. Okay.
So the people had bad memories about 1942, and he asked you something.
Yeah, he asked me to make use the same mechanics, game mechanics, but maybe a different time period.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, yeah, I would make a Roman Empire game, which became Conquest of the Empire. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there I have just named for you this morning the 3 games of the Game Master series: Broadsides and Boarding Parties, Conquest of the Empire, and of course Axis and Allies. They were all kind of born in France in the 70s.
Well, I know them from Milton Bradley, and by far Axis and Allies outsold like Shogun or Conquest of the Empire by far in that time also. We have the reprint of Conquest of the Empire when you did the revised version in 2004 or 5. We own that one. Yeah, you made something like a revised rule set for Conquest of the Empire, and it came in a huge box by Eagle Games. And, we bought it in 2004 or 5 because it was part of the Game Master series, and I was also fascinated by the Shogun game at that date. So that was the first game I had contact with of the MB Game Master series in 1992 or 1993. We played it the whole weekend and was kind of fascinating. And the point was like you had something like an advertisement page on that rule set book, and it was like 40 pages, the biggest rules I've ever read until that day when I was 12, 13 years old, and there was like Fortress America on it. It showed a picture of Shogun, and it had a picture of Conquest of the Empire and Axis and Allies. And I said, well, I want to play Axis and Allies, despite being in the mythology or in the antique. Was heißt Antike?
Antique.
Yeah.
Antique ages as well. And I wasn't disappointed when I played it 5 years later. I told you about the first contact when we played Axis and Allies for the very first time on a digital game application. But when we had the chance to purchase Axis and Allies as a revised version, and later on the other ones, we put them out since that day for board gaming with friends and colleagues and family. So, what kind of year was it when you were disturbing the meeting?
What year was that? That had to be 78, something like 70. Yeah.
So 3 years pre-release of the Axis and Allies game itself. So was it kind of did you have to do Conquest of the Empire part of your own interest, or was it this is to prove yourself, and then we're going to do the game you originally wanted to do, like 1942?
Yeah, no, I wanted. It would have been a great thrill to get something published. So yeah, I wanted this game published, and so I was very driven and excited about this new profession that I was pursuing, and loved it, and hoped I could be successful in it. Turned out that I was successful in it, and I count my blessings for that. Anyway, Axis and Allies in the 70s, France. So,
okay.
You told that the title 1942 was a little bit problematic in France, of course, in whole Europe. Was it, in Germany in the 80s, there was a problem of Nazi symbolism in games. Did you have some problems with a local publisher in Germany with that?
Or any kind of discussion you might remember out of the days?
Oh yeah. So I think the first box of Axis and Allies, or early prototypes and so on, all had the swastika, and and of course there are no swastikas in Axis and Allies, if you consciously are aware of that.
In no version.
In no version, or not even on any box covers, and that was a revelation to me, because I learned then that it was against the law in Germany to demonstrate or present the swastika in any form like that. And so, if we wanted to sell American products, historical World War II games and stuff, we had to be very conscious of that, because it would be complicated if we were trying to sell it in Germany. So became aware of that, and and then I became very happy to the fact that Axis and Allies never did and does not. Well, it may have very, very early stage, but that didn't last long. That did not have the swastika on it. So, because I don't want to appeal to any political, such as nationalist,
fascist, extremist. Yeah, of course.
Sure, don't want to contribute to that. But I go unabashed into military history of this area. It is an amazing story, and it has impacted the world we live in, and the world that we've all grown up in. And unfortunately, not enough people know the history of World War II. And if I can contribute in any way, and I really mean this, if I can contribute in any way into people getting familiar or comfortable with the history or the story that is World War II, I feel that my life has been has at least done something.
So the reason why the swastika has been banned was just the importance that has been seen in the German market, or has there been other reasons too?
I think the publishers wanted to avoid the political side of it, and so so you could go to a board meeting and talk your emotions about I don't like Nazis, and that's fine. But if you go to the board meeting and say, you can't sell this product in Germany because there's a friggin' swastika on it, oh, well, take that off. So so there we are.
Okay.
That's where we are. So in this case, it was good for business and it was good for general principles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to 1978, you jumped into the meeting. You had your bestseller under your belly, or under your arms, and under your arms, and did you change something during the last 3 years, 1970, 1980, 1981, until it was released? Or was it just the prototype? And how long have you developed the prototype? And who did you tell to do a game about World War II before you jumped the meeting? Did you tell it to your family, to your friends? Was it just your own
of course,
product?
all my family. No, not my family. My family was living in the States, and I was still living in France.
Ah, okay.
But I played with friends that I had in France, and we would stay up late at night playing my prototype, and it evolved. I can't tell you specifically at this point. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but it changed somewhat, but I can't tell you specifically what. But it got better. It got better, and then the next step in this story was I decided to return back to the United States in 1980. So I did that. And my ambition was not just to return to the States, but to pursue a career as a game designer in the United States. You have to understand, there was no computers at this time. It was only the remotest notion of what a computer could be or was. So I returned and connected with a headhunter, and this headhunter got me a job at Milton Bradley. And as I was interviewing for this job at Milton Bradley, I was told that I could lay out, display some products that I may have done or prototypes that I was working on in this room, while the interview my potential new boss would come down and interview me in about a half hour. So I set up all this stuff, and he walked in and he saw this, and he called the secretary and he said to her, saw all these games on this table. He said, I thought we were going to clear this out so Mr. Harris could present his stuff. He said, that is Mr. Harris's stuff. And he hired me. He hired me
Instantly.
Immediately. And so
that's very funny. That's very funny. I didn't know. I think he saw your talent, but if he didn't, it's very easy to get a job at Milton Bradley.
One or the other. And so Milton Bradley was wonderful, and Milton Bradley wanted to get into what we call the adventure board gaming area.
Hero Quest and something like this.
Well, this is way before, and Axis and Allies, Conquest of the Empire, Broadsides and Boarding Parties. These were perfect games. Everyone understood what they were. They were not Avalon Hill, complicated Avalon Hill type games. Or Third Reich as our classic
example.
They wanted to get into that business. My boss was coming back from Japan one day with the owner of the company, and they said, this adventure board gaming business, what do we know about that? Maybe we should get into that business, because they're doing Twister, they're doing all the family games, Monopoly, not necessarily
mainstream
Monopoly,
game, party games, family games,
right.
Yeah.
So the idea was, and my boss said to the owner, we just hired a guy who is pretty adapted in that area of adventure board gaming. and he said, "I'd like to get into that business right away." And they saw my games. I'm an employee at Milton Bradley, and they want to buy my games. Now, I want to make this clear. So I get hired. I am an in-house designer. My job is to do licensed gaming and other games for this game company, which is a really cool job. And especially if you're just naturally good at it, like I was. In fact, that first year, Milton Bradley had 13 games in their catalog, and that's an unheard of number of games.
One game a month or more.
Yeah. Well, 3 of those 13 became the Game Master Series, and that was Axionali's Broadsides and Conquest. And so the company wanted to get into this business so fast that instead of having me design games, they just wanted to buy the games that I had already designed. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that being Axionali's Conquest. And so they gave me an offer on that, and they got published. So, and that's what led to what's called the Game Master Series, and it put Axionali's and the other 2 in the main market. Or
did they license it or did they buy it?
License it.
License it. Oh, that was clever. You were doing the Bill Gates strategy. He was doing the licensing to IBM instead of selling his Windows to them for one check.
Yeah, that's the way to go. I mean, I still receive royalties on games. So it's been like 35 years or something.
You did a good job with that decision. Another question would be like, the game is still called 1942. So who came up with the title Axis and Allies?
Okay. So when I came back to the United States, there was this game store that wasn't far from where I was living in Connecticut. It's for the Americans, they all know where that is. And where was I going with this?
GameStop Connecticut?
There was this game store next door, and I used to spend a lot of time there. And I was showing off 1942 to him and people who used to come into his store while I'm waiting for this headhunter to find me a job. And the storekeeper, at the time, Dungeons and Dragons, or sometimes called D&D, was catching on fire and becoming very popular. And the store owner saw the D&D. He saw what might be A&A. He wanted to kind of tie the two. This really all went on through his head. His name was Pat Flory. He owned the store at the Citadel in Groton, Connecticut, and we're talking in 1980. And so he came up with the name Axis and Allies. and I said, I don't know, it sounds almost too gamey, too childish. And I said, and then it grew on me, and I said, no, that is, thank you. We'll call it Axis and Allies. Okay. So that's where the name came from. It was just a good idea, and
maybe it was a good marketing decision. Maybe it really was.
The shortage A&A works.
Say again?
The shortage A&A works, and everybody linked to wargaming, or let's say to mainstream gaming, because Axis and Allies is mainstream in America, knows what you are talking about when you're using the shortage A&A.
The acronym.
The acronym, yes. Yeah. So, and it has the same letters on both sides, so it's not A and D or something.
As B and D, and so and it comes before D. A becomes.
So, you said you were streamlining the game, you were testing it, and then it was 1981. The game was published, and it had...
No, the game was published by Milton Bradley in 1984. Right. I was hired at Milton Bradley in 84, and it went to that Toy Fair. I went to the '85 Toy Fair, I think. Anyway,
The game was already 6 years old.
Right. And it had been published. I sold it to a very small. Forgot this. A very small publisher, which were actually teachers who were part-time game people.
I read it, and I never heard about the company, which was Citated 1981, but I do not have the name on it now, so I have to look it up.
It was Nova, Nova.
Oh, okay.
So I made a deal with them for Axis and Allies, and I actually had to get the game back from them when Milton Bradley wanted to license the game. So that was a big
tricky
deal. It was. That was a long time ago.
Well, but you should have you have the negotiation part done by yourself, or was it like send the lawyers from Milton Bradley, or was it you talking privately to them saying, "Well, I need the game back. I
had to bring them in on a deal.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah,
interesting times.
Yeah, and they've done very, very well with this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to get into this. Yeah, Jesus.
Well, okay. It's 40 years ago, so.
Yeah, you should get over it by now.
Well, well, now it's 1984. You released the game, and I've read I looked up in Wikipedia for research reasons, and there was a quotation of Warren Spector, who had an own computer studio at Looking Glass, and he's kind of famous in the computer game industry. And he said he loved the game because it's so complex. You can have several decisions, and you have different goals for each country where to push for. And he loved it. And the only sentence beside that quotation is that it has received overwhelmingly positive critics in 1984. So did that surprise you, or how did that affect your life? Did you expect it to be successful, or did the people in Milton Bradley expect it to be successful? Because you said, well, they want to get into that business, but if I want to have something, it doesn't mean I achieve it or it succeeds. So what was the reaction in Milton Bradley, and your personal reaction after seeing the first or second year with Axis and Allies in store, and your own game in store, many stores?
It's been, it's never been out of publish in 35 years, 40 years, call it. The game has been constantly on sale for that period of time, on and around. It has appealed to, I don't know, 4 generations, grandpa, the son, the grandson, and then maybe
4 decades, yeah.
Sitting down at a table and playing this game. This is a classic, but it has a niche appeal. It is for people like you and me, and but it's not for everyone. And so what is successful? It was beyond any expectations that anybody at Milton Bradley had, and beyond, well, not beyond mine, because I had great hope for it, but I loved it. I had no doubt about the game. So but it is a niche market. In other words, Axis and Allies is not for everyone, and but those who it is for are passionate about it, and yes, there's enough of us. And the percentages of people who would be attracted to, out of a general population, who would be attracted to Axis and Allies, is about the same percentage as that population's number of people that are interested in history. Okay, not everybody's interested.
Yeah,
so there's,
I agree.
Yeah. So there it is. But it was. But then you take the other games. I don't know, Twister, Monopoly, the so-called. I mean, they are.
Ma-
They
Family
deserve to be
games, mainstream
family games,
classics.
but which are really classics.
Mhm.
They deserve to be. But the definition of a classic is any game that's been around for more than 5 years out there, and Action Eyes has been out there for almost 40.
Well, I think that the point is that the clever point now, talking 40 years later to you after 1981, is that you have reinvented the game. Because when you play Monopoly, it's the same game over and over again since 1935. And if
Yeah.
you're having a new Monopoly game, the streets or the roads are called different, and that's it. And you have no kind of new game aspects, and you kept your brand fresh over the years. So that's my 2 cents to say that's a classic, because when you would have Axis and Allies released in the 1984 version for constantly 4 decades, I think the gaming has evolved because the whole business became more professional. There have been more releases. People were playing with mechanics. Things were going more the computer way. So there was kind of a mixture between what you could simulate on a computer, and some things were adopted from the board games, and the other way around. So there was a lot of transformation during the last 4 decades, and your effort kept that brand fresh, so that people like me, being younger than I was 4 years old in 1984. Sasha, you were 8 or 9?
9.
9.
Yeah, 8,
And
9, yeah.
Alexander wasn't born, so this effort you put into that franchise and into that brand, and reinventing it all over the years, that made it this classic. And if you stop it to develop it from now, it's a very popular game still, and it will be like 2030, 2040, 2050. It won't go out of store, but I think you made something different than the people who have invented Risk or Monopoly. They had one shot and that's it. And you kept on pushing, making your product better and better. And that's the thing I can honor is the wrong word. I'll have to
Yeah, to admire maybe.
to admire, yeah, that you did this.
I would 100% agree on this. Yeah.
And that makes a real classic, because 4 or 5 years a game in store is normal, but then sales drop and it's gone after 10 years. And Axis and Allies won't be gone in 10 or 20 years, never. It's much too popular for people like me and you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well.
It has evolved. I want you to know I've gone to new areas. I have done another World War II epic game. I put a whole war in a box.
We're going to talk about your latest inventions later on, but I'm pretty excited to listen to that story as well. So
yeah, it's a great story, and it's kind of like an evolutionary step. There's a direct line or a drink.
Yeah, I looked at the rule sets and I looked at the game mechanics in reviews, and it seems to be kind of difficult continuing that kind of game under the Axis and Allies brand, because it's the core mechanics are changed. That's kind of a fast forward to that. But going back to Axis and Allies, now you're in 1984. The game is a massive hit for Milton Bradley, and no one expected it. And you said you had high hopes, and they were fulfilled. So I'm sure Milton Bradley said, "Oh, hey, Larry, you're our best friend now. You made that a great product. What do you think about making a successor, another starting year, another setting where you just use the core mechanics you have developed for Axis and Allies in 1984 and use it for 1944 make World War II games over and over and over. And you made so many games, like 200, I've read in the Wikipedia, and just 20, roughly 20, are linked to the Axis and Allies brand. So what did you do after 1984? Did you leave the brand because it was working fine? And you said, okay, that's my massive hit, and now I'm going to try something different.
Yeah, I'm going to try something different.
So what did you do?
Okay.
Well, I left Milton Bradley and went to work for Mattel.
Mattel, okay.
Mattel. And I don't know if that was the best thing or the smartest thing I ever did, but it certainly looked good at the time. And while I was gone, the Game Master series continued to grow, and it grew by the oversight and design efforts of a man named Mike Gray, who is a great game designer in himself, and at Milton Bradley, and he did these follow-up games. What were they? I can't.
You mean in the Game Master series?
Yeah, the continuation of the Game Master
Fortress
series.
America is one which
Fortress
came out
America
later.
Is the classic example of that. Yeah, and of course based on Red Dawn. It was interesting.
North Koreans all over.
But that went on while I was away at now my new company, which was Mattel, and there I enjoyed Mattel. Did a lot of interesting games there, and CD-ROM games and stuff like that. It was a new technology was coming along, and so I don't know where we went with or how we got on this, but that's what happened in that area.
Okay, so after Milton Bradley was Mattel, and then you had the chance to. There was a revision, a second version, 1987, 1991. There was the third revision of the Classic Edition, and then a fourth one was coming up in the early 90s. So you came back to Milton Bradley to design them, or was it just like, okay, I'm doing the redesign, and then?
Okay. Let me, so that you don't have to milk this cow very, very gently. I'll just tell you what happened. The employment history here. So Mattel, from Mattel, lasted a few years. Went to work for Coleco. Coleco had the Cabbage Patch doll and all this, and was really doing well. And then suddenly they weren't doing so well. So I found myself looking for a new job and ended up at Parker Brothers.
Okay.
And not far from where I live right now. Parker Brothers is Parker Brothers. Yeah. Great time at Parker Brothers, but then Parker Brothers was bought by Hasbro. Hasbro owns Mattel. I mean, owns Milton Bradley, and now it owns Parker Brothers. It's like Hasbro is chasing after me, like this big fish.
Well, that was not the worst, so.
No, it was pretty good actually. So I was working for Parker Brothers, and we became Hasbro Games Group, and then I was put back in charge of Axis and Allies because it had come full circle, what with them owning Milton Bradley.
I see. Okay, so you were not able to escape Axis and Allies. That's our luck. So.
And I was not only receiving royalties for it, but I was getting paid to develop it.
So does that mean the initial idea to continue the series wasn't developed by yourself? Maybe the idea.
It was. I promoted it as much as I could. I think everyone in management at Hasbro Games Group saw my enthusiasm and saw the potential here of it being an interesting. Well, certainly they wanted to find themselves in that business area, that adventure gaming area, and so it was a natural thing for them to do.
Okay.
So then I pretty much retired because they wanted me to move somewhere else, and I didn't want to move anymore, and so I just kind of semi-retired some years back.
I started gaming with Alexander with the 4th edition, so I'm not too deep into the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. But for me, you do not have to comment this, but for me the biggest step was the step from classic to revised, because the map was new and the Russians made sense to play, and it was
You're absolutely right.
It was felt like a really, really a game where well balanced, and a game where you put a lot of thought in it. So when did you start designing revised after the classic editions had some minor changes? I read on it in Wikipedia. Some countries were changed, and you had that U-boat bombing, which was possible with fighters in later editions, and so on. But what made you to design the map from scratch? Because if you look on the classic board edition, I exaggerate, but on the Eastern Front you just change, let's say, 2 countries and that's it, and it feels kind of, for an experienced player, it feels kind of you are in a Starre. Was heißt ein Starre?
The stalemate.
In a stalemate, and you have heavily fortified Leningrad and Moscow, and heavily fortified Berlin as well. So when did you think about, okay, this cannot be repaired by changing 2 countries, I want to push in the excitement again, I'm doing it from scratch? And how long did you do this? So in development.
I don't know what you're talking about. I did not understand your question, but I will say. So you realize in '99 and then in 2001 that there was Action Allies Europe, and then it was followed by Action Allies Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Before the and I think there was even D-Day before the revised game.
The Battlegrounds,
no?
Yes. I think D-Day was a bit later, but the Pacific and Europe was around 2000, yes.
Yeah. So that, and that's where destroyers, artillery, things started growing. We saw that there was an opportunity to add new animals to that jungle. I use that metaphor. The different units are the animals that make up the Action Allies jungle, and so some of them can fly, some of them ducks, and then other ones are mammals on. So yeah, there's the analogy. A revised was the big commercial success or the relaunch of Action Allies. So I'm not surprised by your reaction to revised. That it was your age group that ran smack into it. Thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed it, and I think it's still, I didn't play 1942 too much, but it's still worth going back because you can play it in a fewer time session than the very big ones like 1940, for example.
Yeah, fewer, shorter.
Shorter, yes. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, this is
no. Sorry, necessary. I saw it as a good opportunity to point it out. I wanted to be constructive.
Just like Dominic, I like to say it's just that the classic Action Allies game was at a time where the basic strategy games like Risk were at the market. It was a great step. It was really a great game when I played Action Allies first with Dominic on the PC. It was lots of fun, and we played it several times. But after that, I've played the revised edition online quite often, and I don't think with the classic map and classic rule set, I don't think it would have caught me for so many games. I think I played a few hundred games of the revised edition. And I cannot imagine that you will play in today's mindset 100 games of the classic edition. I think it feels a little bit less modern than the revised edition, and the revised is much more balanced. Especially like you called the animals in the jungle with the new artillery units, with the destroyers, with the cheaper ships, the cheaper aircraft like how could you buy many ships or many air in the classic edition? It's
No way.
close to impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, and the USSR can be played actively. I think if you are in my own opinion, you do not have to comment it, but if you are in a classic game and you are 5 players on the table and the guy who's choosing the USSR has 99% of the time just buying infantry and waiting to be killed, or let's say to be liberated by the Axis on the Western powers. So that feels different, and I think that's kind of fixes some historical points, because the Western German, the Nazis, the Third Reich, lost the initiative on the Eastern Front in 1942 in autumn, or maybe even you can say in 1941 in Moscow. And if you're in 1942, you have that case blue push on the Krim and on the Stalingrad area. But from an historical point of view, the Soviets were matching, and they have learned for 1 year how the Wehrmacht operates, and it's a different kind of war. And I think that was never represented for me in the original classic edition, but it felt like a dynamic Eastern Front in revised. And that was kind of, for me, always Risk was the benchmark when I was 9 or 10 years old, and when I was 18, 19, it was classic, and then it was revised for me. So there was kind of, what is my favorite war game? And you have designed them, but I'll have to say every time the step got like, okay, that's the new kid in town you'll have to know and you'll have to play. And that's kind of amazing. And I think the next big step for me was like playing 1940. It's more epic, and I think it's not, my own opinion, it's not 100% balanced, but it brings the whole global theater to another level. And I think you have created a new benchmark for our gaming group and for our peer group.
Yeah, I think so too. 1940 is amazing.
It is, yes.
I was very fortunate that, it was Wizards of the Coast who is a subsidiary of Hasbro Games. So the business part of this is very complicated, and it is like a school of fish, and there's always the bigger ones taking care. Anyway, it was Wizards of the Coast who had, and led by at the time the marketing person responsible for Action Allies, Mr. Brian Hart, who I truly love, actually fought and internally in the company and convinced the right people to do this monster game, 1940 Europe, 1940 Pacific.
Thank you.
And do them with the idea that they could be joined together. That was very ballsy, if I say so myself. And I'm very proud of those 2 games. And I just call them global.
Yeah, we call it global as well, because we always play both theaters together in a bigger group. I have 2 funny stories about playing 1940 for the first time. We saw, the French are on the map, and we gave someone the French, and he was out of the game after 10 minutes. So that was very funny.
He was supposed to be. Did anybody tell him he was supposed to be out of the game?
Well, we were joking all the time about the Italian war success, but the French had really had a tough time. And the second thing we had was like, and I was really, really surprised. Okay, if you play a game for the very first time, you do not have that background, how to open your moves and what could be a good strategy to attack and to approach your attack. But we played it, and there were tons of units on the Axis side. And my brother and me said, like, okay, this game has to be imbalanced because the others do not own anything. And when we continued playing, we saw that the Axis get in trouble if they do not expand very, very quickly. And that was kind of a new feeling, because in 1942 you had that overextension of the Axis in history-wise, and the largest extent of their borders. And now in 1940 you'll have to create it, and you can choose with diplomacy and everything when to do this and where to do this, and that was amazing. Also, the national agendas are new,
Thank you.
and I think that brought something like a new spin to the series. And I was glad hearing that it was kind of a thin line. Being able to do such a game, but I'm glad that there's a 1940. The only con side for me is that it takes a very long time. So if we are setting it up on the table, it's like 1 hour, and then we are going to play, and my wife says, okay, she's going to bed, and it's 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., and you see who's going to win, but no one has been in Moscow, and you'll have to continue on the next day, and she's kind of doing those voices like, and that's the hard time with Axis and Allies 1940 on the board.
Yeah. No, I know. It's too bad. It's too bad. It's long.
Yeah,
but
it is.
Thank you for those insights. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Do you like to share us some more thoughts about those changes, which those major changes from, like, for example, classic to revised rules, or maybe revised to its, like, those 1940. I don't know which version of the rules these are called. Like, for example, you can only attack submarines with destroyers or something, which came in the, I think, 1941 version or something. Do you want to share some thoughts about those major changes?
I really don't have a commanding memory of how these animals came in. I know that destroyers and I think artillery came in '99 with Action Allies Europe and Pacific, and then we also had Marines that came in at that point.
Iron Blitz was with Marines.
Okay, and then there was the D-Day game where we had blockhouses, and
we didn't play any of those scenario games, but we are always interested in them. And I was a student, and my brother was a pupil, so we were not having large budgets to spend on board games, and they were out of print, and they never came back in Germany, and now they are kind of sold for kind of high prices on the internet. So we know that those games, and I know that one was Guadalcanal. And I've read on a source on the internet that your father has inspired you with his diary to do Guadalcanal. Is that true?
I didn't get into that. But
well, I was asking about 2010, 29 and 2010, first and second revision of Axis and Allies 1940, and my brother had a question for that as well.
Yeah. After you made it a big step with that revised and the later versions, how long did you take to develop this 1940 version?
Yeah, I think it came out around 2009 or 10.
That's
at least
the
specific.
release, yeah.
Yeah, it came out. Both of them are out by 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, so from what, Europe in '99, or the revised was in 4.
Mm-hmm. Then there was a pause.
So it's about 6 years, about 6 year gap.
Okay.
So you started developing directly after revised?
No, after revised, we went through a lot of different games. Went through
all those
Battle of the
battlegrounds.
Bulge.
Yeah.
Went to Battle of the Bulge, went to Guadalcanal, and there was even an anniversary edition, remember?
Yeah, very expensive and very rare.
Yeah, a very big, I think that was in...
Introducing Italy.
Oh, yeah, 08.
The 1941 came in between. And when the game developed further and further, did your influence on the game design stay at close to 100%, or
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, it stayed at 100%.
Okay.
So do you have people who are who you show your work first? So let's say you're doing a prototype and you played with your people in France, and then there's all the other editions coming up. Who's your peer group, or who's your inner circle you are testing the games with, and how long
Yeah,
do you test them?
I test them. I don't have as much time to test them as I would like. I would like to spend a lot more time,
Hmm.
but I'm up against publication schedules and so on. So, that's just the reality of it. And but I don't have any complaints in that. Usually get done what has to be done. And but I have local play testers that I use, and people whose opinion I trust, and sometimes know more about the game than I do. And
Okay.
don't laugh. I used to be the best Axis and Allies player on the planet. I was absolutely the best, and then somebody else learned how to play it. So.
Back in 1980, nobody could beat you.
Unbeatable.
I was unbeatable, man.
Yeah. 100% winning percentage.
So when you're getting feedback from your playtesters, there's nothing coming to the game where you don't say, okay, that's good, and so you're always having had the last word with those.
He's meaning the publisher. Is he say they are kind of criticizing some mechanics or some changes, I guess.
I have to sell the game to my playtesters, and I have to listen carefully to them. I have to forget ego, which is not always easy.
Yeah.
And strive for the best game it can be, and not care from where the ideas come or that kind of thing. What would make this the best game it could be is the question I have to continuously ask. So, and then I have to sell it to the company, the publisher, who will have the burden of the expense of what's in my imagination.
The risk,
and then I will say, we really don't want to have this included because we can save 16 cents and so you got that going on. So it's very dynamic. A lot of things are at play, and there are some notable barriers or limitations of what exactly can go into one of these boxes and still be competitive in price range and so on.
Well, I think a big success for, let's say, casual players is also that it has the miniatures. So if you're having infantry and artillery, you can move them. You do not have those kind of squares, or you have those NATO symbols. You just have those items, and I think that was very clever to insist integrating something like that. What you have shown us in your 1942 box with the ships and everything. So that gives the analog gaming a certain kind of flavor. So I know that it's always rising the price, but it's worth doing it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do not have to comment it. So, Alex, do you have another question?
I have another question. When you let's say you're having a free weekend with your friends, and they want to play Axis and Allies with you, or let's say you're having one day, or one night, let's rather say, because it always takes long. Which version would you prefer to play with them?
I would say let's not play Axis and Allies. Let's play my latest game, and I'd like to get your opinion of it, or let me show you what I'm working on. That's how that would unfold.
They are allowed to play the prototypes all the time.
I seek them out. But if I was to play Axis and Allies, and I think I understand the gist of your question, what's my favorite Axis and Allies game, the one I would like to play the most? I like 1940. I like
the zombie edition.
I like Battle of the Bulge a lot.
Okay.
One of the games I did, and I particularly like a more recent game called Axis and Allies 1914, World War I.
World War I, yes, we have.
I don't know if you've played it.
Not yet, but we have.
Okay, I highly recommend it. It's one of my more brilliant
Okay.
games. I think it captures the feel of World War One, the stagnation, the front lines,
Yeah.
and so
People
on.
do not fight until the very end, and the IPCs do not belong to anyone if there are two different nations in the country, and specialized artillery rules. I just have an overview
There you
about it, but I didn't go into details reading it.
you have to play it.
I
It's
can put it out of my cupboard. It's over there, so it's
Yeah,
it's
we
still
just
in
haven't played it yet.
it's still in shrink because we have a peer group and they always say 1940, 1940, 1940, and so the 3 or 4 times a year we meet with our 5 to 6 people. It's like 1940 all the time. And my brother and me would go to 1914, but we'll have to read the rules. And even if your rules are very good, understandable, it takes an evening or so. And we see each other. How often do we see each other a year?
right. I understand.
5, 6 times, 7 times.
Yeah.
So that's not that often. I'll have a question about the scenarios, the battlegrounds. You said Battle of the Bulge, Guadalcanal, which might be inspired by your father. You didn't comment that yet. D-Day, and one thing that strikes me is when they were new, it was striking me as well, that you had no battles on the Eastern Front, like Battle of Moscow, Stalingrad, Battle of Kursk, or any kind of battles on the Coral Sea, or let's say midway in the Pacific. You were always focusing on the Western Front to bring in a certain day, like the D-Day or the Battle of the Bulge, where you had the 3 weeks where the Ardennes offensive was pushed by the Wehrmacht in late 1944. So why were there no games about El Alamein 1942 with the British, or even that might be very. I think I wouldn't do that as a game designer, but there could be also games about Pearl Harbor or Market Garden or France 40, things where the Axis looked much better than the failed operations of the Allies. So why did you stop that series, and why was it only focused a lot on the battles the US people know as the hero tale of World War
Yeah,
II?
yeah. It's because of marketing.
Yeah.
There are certain. These are American game companies. 80% of their business is American. Chances of selling games would be to sell battle games that are known to the American population. There's no. There has been demonstrated interest in doing Stalingrad and Eastern Front, North Africa. These are all very often requested by Axis and Allies fans, and I have no problem with it. And I have a great interest in these battles, as I would any of them. But there are certain battles that are just inbred into the American psyche that had to be addressed. And from a business point of view, commercial point of view, probably have more potential, commercial success potential than other less known battle situations.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
Another thing is like when you think about those battles, I've heard in the off speech you have on the multimedia CD on Hasbro that you have been with your father to the D-Day landing spaces in France, and you had.
My father was a hero in World War II, but he fought against the Japanese.
Yeah, he was in the Pacific Theater. Yes,
he was in the infantry, radio operator. He fought in the Solomon Islands, New Guinea, Philippines, all big battles. He had ships sunk under him. He was bombed by Mitsubishis. He survived kamikaze charges. What do you call them? I guess they're kamikaze. What do you call that?
the
Banzai
airplanes. Yeah.
charges. And was behind enemy lines for weeks and in the Philippines, and was truly a hero. And when I learned his story, because I ran into his diary, World War II diary that he kept, and I discovered it maybe when I was 10, and I took control of it. I possessed it because I wanted to protect it and not have it get lost in some move that we were going to do next week or something like that. Because we did move a lot. But he introduced me to World War II by way of his diary and the story, the exciting story. And this was not somebody who was just an unknown to me. This was my father. This is the man I could look at the end of the table and know that a few years earlier, maybe some less than 10 years earlier, he was participating in combat in the Pacific. So it was an inspiration. It excited my imagination and stroked my historic interest in World War II. So there you are. So I dedicate to him, or I say about him that he is in fact my inspiration.
Yeah, well, I was asking because I had that link, and I was reading on an old article about you that you were serving for your country in the Vietnam War, and I was always wondering. I do not have the complete overview, but being inspired by your father is like, when are you going to tell your own history about your participation in a war you have experienced actively? I might be on wrong sources, but I think the Vietnam battle is, or the whole war might be a very interesting scenario box for doing any kind of games today as well, because a lot of time has passed, and you have another view on that whole conflict nowadays, like you had in the 1968, 70, 72 era. So that's why I was asking for your father, because when he has been the inspiration for Axis and Allies in some kind of way, when will you tell us your story?
Okay, I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right now. First of all, you have been misinformed.
Okay.
I went into the Army in 1965, and the Vietnam War was just beginning to even be known. And I went to jump school and became a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Okay. So no pilot, you have been an airborne ranger.
This is one of my prized possessions, this hat. I wear it all the time. Especially when I don't want to comb my hair all day. So, and it's been everywhere. But I was with the 82nd Airborne in 1965 or so. In 1967, they called me out, and every morning they would call us out. And we would replace what we jokingly said were dead guys of the 101st Airborne, which was in Vietnam, and the 82nd was not in Vietnam. It was a strategic reserve.
Okay.
To be sent maybe if something broke out in Europe or wherever. So, but we were a replacement division for troops for the 100, because there's only 2 airborne divisions in the United States. There's a brigade, the 173rd, but there was the 101st, the 82nd, and then a brigade, the 173rd.
Okay.
And the 173rd and the 101st, not to bore you with details, were in Vietnam, and they were drawing from the 82nd. They called me out one morning, and they said, Harris, and I stepped forward and said, okay, I'm finally going, because this was my war. This was the war that I was going to fight, because my father fought his, and that's just the way my head ran. And so it was all normal and nothing unusual about this. It was just my destiny. And and they said, you're going to Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers, Europe. That's like Eisenhower's headquarters. It would be the Supreme Headquarters. But, of course, Eisenhower was a long time gone. But it was NATO headquarters, and it was in Paris in 1967.
That's how you came to France.
That's the first time I went to France. And everybody was being shuffled up to Mons, Belgium, because de Gaulle kicked or left NATO and kicked NATO out of France, and so everybody had to move to Mons, Belgium, and I'm just arriving, and I'm looking around, and nobody cares who I am or what I am or why I'm there, and I say I really don't care either. This is kind of cool. And so I don't know. Everybody kind of took off, and I'm standing there looking at my shoes and say, well, maybe I should just wait for orders. And I spent the summer in Paris. And
not the
finally,
worst time, I guess.
And then finally the orders caught up, and they moved me to Mons, Belgium. But yeah, so from the 82nd, where I was scheduled to go to Vietnam, and I was very disappointed I wasn't going to Vietnam at the time. But of course, when I got to Paris, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Too.
I think I wouldn't trade the jungle for Paris. Yeah.
No. And so
okay. So I had wrong information about that, but I've read that in an article, and I was always wondering, like, being a pilot is something different than a paratrooper. So that is my first mistake. And I thought
I'm not a pilot.
Yeah, an airborne ranger. You were doing the paratrooping.
I was.
You had to jump out of planes.
Yes, did that quite a few times. 17 times.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome. I still stuck with 0, so.
And, I never got used to it. It always scared the shit out of me.
Okay.
I never got used to it. But I did it, and yeah, I'm good with it.
But that's an interesting part of your story as well as a private person. So
yeah. So and then I lost my security clearance with NATO headquarters because they had a French girlfriend whose father was a communist or something, and so they sent me to Wurzburg, Germany.
Würzburg, Germany. That's my town.
Yeah,
I thought so, but I wasn't there long. I was with the 3rd Division, 64th
You've
Armor.
been to Veitshöchheim.
Huh?
You've been to Veitshöchheim. That's 5 kilometers away from Würzburg. There were the Americans, or in Kitzingen. That's kind of a second base around here.
Okay.
And they closed it because of the end of the world of the Cold War. So, but there were genau, Giebelstadt. There were Americans like 50 years from 1955 or 1950 to 2005, 2006, 2007, and then now they have closed all those spaces. You haven't been to the city for a long time.
No, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's worth revisiting.
I wasn't there for a long time because I was back. I wasn't in my great 82nd anymore. I was in Germany washing tanks at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I don't like this.
Well, better than jumping out of the plane. So
I got reassigned. Long story short, I went to Italy, and that was fun. And then Italy, I went back to States and got out of the Army. And then I wanted to just go back to France to visit, and I saw I was on the airplane reading the Herald Tribune, American newspaper in Europe, and Merrill Lynch was looking for a teletype operator, and I said, I think I'll just go see them next Monday. And I did, and they hired me, and then I went to school, and that was free, and I got the terrible socialized medicine in France, which I just loved, and and I ended up staying in France for 10 years. So a vacation turned into 10 years. And a long story there.
But that's really funny, and I think the most amazing part is that you've been to Würzburg, because the only thing if I tell something like we are here in Germany and we say, okay, we are in Würzburg. Oh, that's close to Berlin. Well, it's 500 kilometers, and our country has only a size of close to 1,000 kilometers. So
Nearly, yeah.
that's not that near to Berlin. It's nearer to Paris, actually, maybe. And that's always the funny part, talking to the Americans. And you've been, I know how big your country is. It's like the European Union itself. But but I think that's the funny part, that you've been to the town. You've been in town, and it's really worth visiting Würzburg. I told Sasha as well. Würzburg is a very beautiful town here in Germany. So if you ever come over, just give me a call. You do not have to play your games. We just just hang out.
Or let me introduce you to the one I'm working on at that point. That's what it is. I am absorbed in a game I'm working on right now. It's called, and I'll let you know about it. It's called Imperial Borders, and it's Europe.
Saw it on the clip, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I'm so excited about this game. It'll probably be coming out. We're going to do another Kickstarter. We did a Kickstarter with War Room, and it was very successful. And we're going to do another one with Imperial Borders, which is a Napoleonic kind of game, but this is after Napoleon. Okay. This is the Congress of Vienna and so on.
Rising nationalism, 1815. Yeah.
1815. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I was asking about playing X and LS competitively. Did you ever do that? Did you ever know people who did that, or is it done basically on conventions in the States?
Yeah, it's done at conventions. There are competitive trophy-winning competitions organized. Nothing to do with me directly, although I often make myself available for autographs or presentation of trophies and stuff. But it's independent groups of people who sponsor and put together these tournaments at these conventions, and they really do a good job.
Okay, so you, for example, at the conventions, at the end, the winner is getting the trophy by Mr. Larry Harris himself?
It happens if I happen to be at a convention, sure.
Who was following you up as a series winner after 1981?
Who?
After you have been unbeaten for 4 years until 1981, who was your successor as a champion?
Like anybody who knew how to play the game, basically. But it took forever for them to read the rule book. So I was the best in the world for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were saying that it had nothing to do directly with you. That leads to another question. Have you been designing the Larry Harris tournament rules, or do they just carry on?
I have done that. No, I do that. I get asked to do it, and usually it's just looking for an official way to make the game shorter so it fits within somebody's time frame. And but yet if it's done by me or the designer's normal, it's like it was written by the author, if you will, and it has more prestige or legs, if you will, than otherwise. Yeah. Oh wow, okay. Dominique, I can't even recognize you anymore. You're just big blur. It looks like somebody hit you with a big pie.
We are now in trouble a bit with the technique, because when we talk simultaneously, it's very difficult to cut it or to edit it in the post-production. So I will always wait until you have finished with all your thoughts and sentences. Before that, we could go square. That was no problem.
Well, okay. Next question, please.
Yeah. I have another question. Maybe you've heard of something called the AAA project.
Oh, Jesus.
Did you hear about it?
It's just pure copyright violation to the nth degree.
Okay.
It's, what can I say? I'd rather not even talk about it.
Yeah, you can skip that topic if you want to.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to make a living off of Axis and Allies with my, with my creativity, and then AAA just what's the word? They make it public domain within a week. Not good. Although, I love the fact that people are playing Axis and Allies and stuff, but I don't like the idea that the copyright's not being honored. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's basically what they're doing. They're making the game like open source, provide all sorts of maps, and of course that's against the interests of the publishers and the people who sell the game. On the other hand, the question is, do you really think that people who are downloading the game, playing it on the internet, do you think that's really taking away customers from the market who then just play the game online, not buying it as a board game?
I don't know. Maybe they complement each other. Like if they're that involved where they're in AAA, is that they've already bought and purchased the game itself and probably have one of each of the new editions. So it's hard. It's just the principle of violating copyright that, copyright is an important thing. It should be honored. I don't know the right answer. I try to observe copyright whenever I can, but there you are. So, yeah, it's just the principle.
I first played Revised on the AAA platform, and then I bought it. So I was kind of playing it and then purchasing it. So, and otherwise, I'm not sure, because back in the time 2005, there was no Amazon.com, and it was worldwide known, and you could get the games from everywhere. For me, that was also kind of an information platform where I knew, okay, there was new stuff coming out, and it couldn't emulate everything. So the Battleground editions I have never played, for example. So for me, it was always kind of an opportunity to get in contact with your new creations, and I was buying them anyway. So I will, as you have opened your cupboards, I will leave in a few moments and pick out all the merchandise I have of Axis and Allies. I already have those dices where you have, when you roll a 1, it's the flag of the nation, and it's specialized for Axis and Allies. And I thought that was really funny as a gimmick for some kind of games we had. A friend of mine, was heißt ein Schenken?
Gift present.
It was gift of a friend of mine. So I'm always thinking that is a vital community, but I can understand the problematic issue with the copyrights, and especially if you are the game designer and you're unsure if it's bringing any kind of revenue, because that's the base for living. Another thing I've wanted to ask, for digital reasons, is did you ever think about doing some kind of enhanced version of Axis and Allies, not on the board, but did they offer you, like you said, you were at Mattel and they had all those CD-ROMs and multimedia thing, and did someone approach you like, hey Larry, do you have some kind of ideas which do not work on the board? Let's do an enhanced digital version only and sell it to the people, like introducing fog of war or any kind of other features which are pretty difficult to handle or even impossible on the board.
Great idea. That conversation would go on between the publisher and the house that wanted to produce that game, the electronic game. It would not involve me, other than at some point I would get involved either to endorse it or to help design it. With that media in mind, electronic. And I don't sense that my current publisher is interested in pursuing that direction. I wish they were, but they're not. So, that is a whole nother story, and be best.
You do not have to go in detail about that. Yeah. One thing is, do you know what? Do you use battle calculators when you test games, or do you or when you play them? Because they are kind of they take away the estimation if that battle is going well or not, because the CPU rolls out the battle for 20,000 times in a second, and then you have the statistics, how much units will survive in average, and how often each side's win. That's possible for an app in iOS or on Android, or it is served by some digital versions of the game as well. So what is your opinion about battle
digital
Alex?
enhancements for calculations?
Yeah.
I have not used that technique. I recognize an odd roll or an example of an extreme roll. So I recognize it immediately and take it into consideration when I'm measuring the results or trying to draw some kind of conclusion from the experience, when I'm playtesting. So I just understand what a good roll is, or an average roll versus an extreme roll, either that being good, too good for a player, or too bad for a player. The no luck. I made my peace with dice in war games. I've concluded, first of all, from my studies, my readings, and it's a lifetime of studies and readings on war itself. I feel I know war, although I have not experienced it personally. I think I know what it's about, and it's a lot of luck. It's a lot of, did he roll a 1 or did he roll a 6? And some men live and die because they were an inch to the left or an inch to the right. What could be more parallel to that of dice than that? So I don't mind the weirdness of dice. It plays big roles. At Waterloo, if it hadn't rained that night before the battle, Napoleon probably would have won it. So somebody rolled some good numbers with the weather. Okay, we're dealing in a domain here where luck plays a big role, and that domain, of course, is war.
Speaking about those dice rolls, I've already asked about playing competitively, and this notorious AAA group, they have implemented something which is called the low luck rule. Do you know what that means?
I've read about it. I don't know that much about it. The name itself kind of describes what it is, and fine. If people want to play a game of chess, maybe they should play chess.
This is funny. This is extremely funny because I've as a little story, I've played competitive for a few hundred games, and then a few years ago I've received an invitation to a revised tournament, and after I declined, the person who invited me, he asked why, and I said I don't play low luck anymore. Doesn't give me as much fun as dice games do, because I exactly did what you did. I compared it to chess, and when you play revised with the low luck rules, it feels like playing chess. And if you're playing dice, the game creates more situations where you have to create your own way to react to them, which will never happen when you're playing with the low luck rules. And what happens if when you're playing many games there happens exactly the same. What happens in chess? You will always be the player who is much weaker than you, and you will never beat a grandmaster. And this takes away much fun from the game. And of course, I can understand the other hand, where players say, well, I've played very good. I've played for 6 hours, and then I get horrible dice at the Battle of Moscow, and I lose the game for no reason. I can also understand that, and but then I compared this to maybe Texas Hold'em, where you will will also win most of the games if you play better, but you don't win always. What do you think about that comparison?
Yeah, I like that. Right. I mean, it can't be pure luck. You have to weigh the dice. That's why different animals in my jungle of Axis and allies have different weights and different numbers to consider. It's easier to hit from a certain number down than another one. If it's 4 or less, you have a pretty good chance that you'll hit it. Whereas if it's 2 or less, you won't. So that's an example of a weighed dice, right? So it's not just pure everything is pure luck. It's weighed dice. Come on, what more can I do for you as a designer? I remove some aspects and I give you some predictability, but there are extreme cases, as there are in life. And I think it's a nice marriage. I'm okay with it. I don't need no luck. I don't need that. And if you need that, well, don't play Action Alice.
That's exactly my opinion.
I agree on this, because you have different people coming together, having a good time, and you can level out with the luck also the playing experience for everyone. Because if you're the grandmaster in the comparison with chess, you are the guy who's owning the others, and if you make one mistake, the game is already over and you play for 3 or 4 hours longer. And units always, that's the point if you're playing low luck, because I knew about that situation as well. The problem is that if you're having the Battle of Moscow, you normally have 25 infantry or 30 or 35, and in low luck 2 good players have 100, and that's kind of silly, playing like twice or triple the time and having no real influence on the battle except of calculation. And you have tiny influence. There's always a re-roll for 1 hit, but that's it. Like if you're having 200 units, there's no luck, like you said. And I think that's a typical thing which is only used by very passionate fans and people who are only playing it online, preferably, because you do not have even the items at home to simulate those low luck battles. That's impossible with a board game. That's my personal opinion about that. But we are having a lot of talk about the Axis and Allies project all the time, and you were kind of in the starting position for the War Room talk, and now you are the Grandmaster, because I know the rules and I've seen the videos and I've seen the reviews, but I know that Alexander isn't too deep into War Room, and Sasha didn't research War Room at all except the background stories. So can you tell us about the development you've done during the last 5-6 years, and what kind of game came up, and what is so different, or the evolution of the game itself? That would be very interesting.
I hope I can do it justice, because it's a great story. Met a fellow who I, in time, developed a great respect for, and work ethic, much like my own. He's smarter than me, and that's something I really appreciate in anybody. And his name is, and he owns his name is Tom Gale, Gale, and he started a company called Nightingale Games, and he is very clever guy. We developed War Room very much together. I led the design effort. He led the questioning everything I did and every position and assumption I formed, and then he did some great graphics, and then he spent endless hours playtesting with me, and we designed, I think, the best World War II game ever made.
Wow!
And and I'm not alone to say that. I've heard game reviewers say it, that it is the best game they've ever played.
I've heard that as well.
And,
I've heard the same.
Yeah. And and there was no rush on time. It took us a long time to develop this game. It was like designing 12 different games that we just kept throwing old stuff, just throwing things away, just liberally. And we only wanted the best. We wanted the best componentry. In other words, the stuff it's made out of, the how it feels, how it looks, the colors, the balance, the originality, but yet the simplicity. It was never to be complicated for any player. It was supposed to be the general action that you take were simple in themselves. There was a lot of simple things, which could get a little confusing, but that's okay. But it felt like World War II. The globe, the map itself was round. It was a polar view. You're looking down. You're dealing with such notions as national stress. How are the German people? Morale, how are they holding up to the bombardments or the loss of a battleship or a large number of infantry in North Africa? There was penalties to pay in terms of stress, which could impact your numbers, your resources, the amount of money you were making, or movements you could make.
Limited movement, yeah.
Yeah. So it was my job as the designer to capture this stress and to translate it into numbers that felt right, that gave you the feeling that England was being stressed out from the bombings, or Germany, and so or the loss of the Hood. Big hit on the morale stress. Each country has its own threshold of what kind of punishment they could take before the needle on the stress level would move one way or another, and that was based on some historic realities that or even notions of the culture involved. So and where am I going? And then the dice are weighed. They're not numbered. They're colored. There are 4 yellow. There are 3 blue. There are 2 green. And then you get into 1 red, 1 white, 1 black position on each dice. So when you're rolling a die, or 2 dice, or 50 die, or 30 dice, you have probably a propensity to roll more yellow than any other color. And so with that, I built the whole mathematical jungle, a new one, with basic units. Called the game War Room, wanted it to look like a war room, wanted to have these little pushers that you would move stuff around on your map. I wanted you to build your own war room in your basement. In America, in the 50s and 60s, fathers and sons bonded by going downstairs into their basements and building railroads. And they would buy tunnels, and they would buy little things, pills they could drop in that would give your little locomotive would have smoke coming from it. It became a shared hobby. I think War Room could become a shared hobby. I think I can envision not men's caves, but they're war rooms where they go down and they play Axis and Allies, or they play War Room, or they play Imperial Borders, or they play some game that maybe Larry Harris didn't even invent.
That's close to unlikely.
And if they're really smart, they go buy a Sid Meier game and play that one.
That's on a computer.
But yeah, they could get away from their computer environment and socialize around this amazing war room that they constructed, maybe in the basement or the attic or a room of their house. Yeah.
Well,
so I'm very happy with War Room. I love it. I'm very proud of it. It weighs 28 pounds. It's very expensive, but when you open that little sucker, you see, my God, this thing is the best or the most beautiful game I've ever seen. And I say that and stand by that belief. Yeah. Okay, done.
Like I said, I'm always attracted by your games, so it's on my watch list. But I'll have to say the price is a beast. So all the things you said is like you made a game without any compromises, and that's the way it should be that's your imagination. And I know about the time, like we found an article where you said in 2018 you have been in development for 4 to 5 years on that game, and the main rules were rolled out already, and in 2019 it was delivered to the Kickstarter fan projects. But I must say, after watching the reviews, I'm very attracted. But there are some points which are coming up, and I share those critical points with some of the people. I've read the comments on Boardgame Geek. You know the site, I guess, where you have the library of all the games, and you can rate them from 1 to 10, from awful to superb. And you can log your games, when did you play it, and so on and so forth. It's an internet site called Boardgame Geek, and there your new invention has the highest rating of all Larry Harris games. That says everything for me. But the people said a round table. No one has a round table at home in the living room, or close to no one. The map is huge, and the price is extraordinary high. So people hope for a cheaper version where you make one or the other compromise that people can play it, or even a digital version where you can put your toe in and say, okay, it's worth $300 to have it on the table. Because that's something I told you how often my group plays, and they always say it has to be 1940. And if I tell them, well, there's a game after 1940 where you can say infantry is in defense or offense, and you can have a flexible turn order, and you can have the resource management, and you have those brackets where you can pull the divisions on the table, and you have the synchronity and the I think the downtime in Axis and Allies is with many people. If you played with 2 people, it doesn't appear, but if you're playing with 5 or 6 people, it takes sometimes an hour until you are doing something again. And that's all those points regarding the reviews are fixed now. You're always bound to the table, always in the game, and very intense theme feeling all the time you are participating. You feel that you're participating, and it seems to bring back the magic for those people like my brother, who's played your games 400 times or something like this. So
Thank
you.
I would invest the money, but $300 is like getting 10 other games. So it's a very, very nice approach to say, okay, I'm not doing any compromises. That's the war room. But what is for the normal people who are who are limited in space, and not me now talking about it, but having more the family approach about playing games? Because I've read that the rules are that you can do a lot of mechanical things, and there are a lot of options, but the rules aren't complicated, and that's a masterpiece if you are having so many elements in a game. But will there be a reprint not being $300?
There'll probably be a second print starter, Kickstarter. No, all these things you described, we are aware of. A smaller map. That's an interesting idea. I don't think we've actually said that to each other, Tom and I, about just make a smaller map, because my whole career has been trying to get bigger maps, and now all of a sudden they're just too damn big. Come on, I mean, give me a break here.
The problem is it is round, because your table is
it doesn't have to be on a round table. It could be on a square table.
Yeah, but if you're the normal tables are like for the rectangle board games, like you have shown us with 1942 with your first prototype of Axis and Allies, and it has a round global vision, and it could overlap, and so you cannot. I think many people are afraid that it's not fitting on the table because it's round, because the tables are rectangles. Like your table at the background, but it's a very big table. I see.
I kind of think these people would find another excuse not to buy this game. Okay, I mean,
could be. Yeah.
The fact that it's round or big or it's got too much blue. I don't. Buy it or don't. I really don't care at this point. But it's the best that I could put together, or we could put together, and we did it based on what we thought was the wish list of our consumers. Secret simultaneous movement, resource-driven economy where you have to have a certain amount of oil, iron, other strategic resources. Did I say secret simultaneous movement? Yes, and I'll say it again because it's so fun. And the simple combat system, which allows you, and you referred to it, to take a defensive or offensive stance. You play on this huge map that, might take up. Some people might be not have access to it, but there are others who have basements and so on. Build your war room. It's got to be.
I need to build a new house.
Build a new house. I don't care. I don't care what you do. I don't care. It's not my problem.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right, because you have to see the Kickstarter. It was really, really successful. The goal was $150,000, and you reached it in less than 24 hours. And it ended up at $400,000. And I think it's very successful. And the people who wanted this game, they say, okay, you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, people who complain about the length, the size, they're looking for something to complain about. This game, like Axis Now, is not for everybody. There are people who gave the reviews of, gave it 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 10 being best. Gives it 1 because I just don't like these kind of games, and I thought I'd stop by and drop a 1 on you as I scan through the web. Why do they even bother? They write, here's a 1. I just don't like these kind of games. Bye bye. What the hell? Am I supposed to give that any value? No. Anyway, and its ranking is really high because people who own it are generously giving so many 10s and just falling in love with this game, and that warms my little cotton picking heart. So yeah, there we are. I mean, what are you gonna say?
Like I said, it's on my watch list and on my wish list, and I hope that if
I apologize for the cost, I think it's expensive too, but I do think it's worth what you pay for. What you get what you pay for with this game. And it could be an investment that not only you, but maybe a couple of friends get together and buy and really master it, and enjoy it, and so on.
That's what we think about. I'll have to say, and I'll have to admit that I didn't see the Kickstarter campaign when it was live. I realized that there was a Kickstarter campaign when it was over, and I followed on the internet with comments, articles, and now after we have agreed to the interview, I saw kind of 3 reviews from board game YouTubers, and they were kind of amazed. And the only thing they had on the con side is the thing I told you, roundtable might be difficult for people and the price is high, but they came to the conclusion that it's totally worth it. So that's why it's on my list. And if there's a second Kickstarter, I might be very close to click for ordering. so that might happen. like I said, the mechanical side and the possibility not to calculate everything on the war side, what is going to happen, what are the actions of the enemy, what are the actions of your allies, you'll have to adjust to them. That sounds more flexible than the fixed turn order of the Axis and Allies, doing science, then move to combat, then after combat, and now you have situations where you can block movement, or where you can strike first and the other planes do not go right. And I think that's a very interesting point, because that's what war feels like.
That's and that's due to the fact that it's secret, simultaneous movement.
With the boards,
with the fog of war, and the different outguessing and the different scenarios or results that secret movement generates. It's fun. It's just fun. You like diplomacy, so there's some diplomacy in this game, and in that regard, trying to guess where your enemy is really going to go, and not what you think he's going to do so much as what he ends up doing. It's just often, more times than not, surprising and delightful to witness. It's just fun.
Okay. How do you manage that? These parts where you're trying to guess where your enemy is going, or you're making secret diplomacy agreements. How do you keep the game fluent? Are there time limits on something, or how do you keep, or how long does a session of War Room take?
Yeah, it's long. I think it's shorter than Axis and Allies, because you can lose the game because of your stress levels, and you can actually get to a point where you're at so much stress that you have massive desertions from your army, so you start disappearing from the board. It's shorter than Axis and Allies. It's okay if you want a short game. Don't buy this one. If you want a game where you can where it takes you a weekend or a good part of a weekend, or it's an investment of time and effort, this is the one to go with. There's I think less downtime in this game than there is in other things I've done, and lessons learned from earlier publications have been brought to bear on this game, so this game has benefited from many years of experience. Yeah.
That's what I wrote. That's what I read in the writings as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. Like, is there any games? Is there any games you can could be your games or could be other games where you can compare part of the mechanics, or is it some melting of some mechanics from other games? Could you describe that?
No, but there are similarities. Diplomacy has secret movement, so does war. So will Imperial Borders. In fact, I don't think I'm going to do any more games without secret movement. just great stuff. And Fog of War is, I think, critical to capturing the spirit of a war game. You don't really ever know what the enemy's going to do, and so it's part of it. Outguessing him and so on is part of the fun. No, I don't like to draw comparisons, but with other games, and then bring them to mine. I usually don't even. I design as per what the theme and the feel that I'm looking for. That dictates what goes into my games. Not what's been successful, but it will always be secret movement from now on.
Okay, so it's working out pretty well if you decide to do it, to implement it in your new games as well. And I think the interesting thing about Imperial Borders is that you are leaving the 20th century history-wise, which you did only within this interview talking about Conquest of the Empire, which was one of your first games you have designed. So are there certain epochs or certain theaters of war you want to have a look at when you continue doing your to continue doing your design after Imperial Borders and War Room?
I want to do some more World War II games, maybe small, not global or epic, just maybe smaller battle games. World War II. Is there a period? I like the American Revolution. I've been reading a lot about it. Just read a book, Washington's Immortals by Patrick O'Donnell. It got me all excited about what went on in the in North America back in those days, late 1870s and 1770s.
1776, yeah.
Yeah, not the 80s. And I like that period. I don't know. I've touched all the period. Rome, you know. If I did an Alexander the Great game, it would be just another Roman game with a different, but they speak Greek instead of
and some kind of game like 30 Years of War in Europe from 1618 to 1648. That's not covered really. It's Wallenstein, and that's it. That's the only topic who's using it, and it has different mechanics like your games. So and you have a lot of parties like France, Germany, which is splintered, Sweden. You have Austria, you have Bohemia, so there's a kind of very deep interest in Central Europe, having a lot of fighting and having a lot of parties with different ambitions to win that one, and you could introduce religion, which was the outbreak factor of it, so that could be an interesting scenario in my opinion as well. So because I'm always wondering that no game designer really has touched that field, and it's kind of left out of the historical view. Because if I'm talking about games about North against South in the Secession Wars or Independence War, there are some games from the designers, but there's no real game except Wallenstein about the Central European fights in the 17th century. So that would be something I would look like if I had your talent. So
yeah, obscure. You could design something too obscure to the point where it's not appreciated. It's so obscure that its finesse and the work you did to capture the theme and the historical recreation, it's just not even appreciated because nobody knows or gives a rat's ass about it. So, so you got to be careful not to go into Frederick the Great and all this, these little.
Yeah, you need more familiar ground to walk on.
You have to hang out there. You do. Yeah. I think Civil War, American Civil War. I'm a great fan of the Civil War. I'm historically conscious of the Civil War. I appreciate it. I try to learn as much as I can. I read a lot about it. I just read Grant's biography. A lot of insights into the Civil War. But I don't want to do a Civil War game right now. My country's pretty well divided as it is. I don't need it anymore.
It is indeed so. You must do a game about 21st century politics. So that would be fun.
Not yet. Someday. But I could make an action. I actually had this thought. I could make an Action Allies game that instead of countries, it would be planets, and and continents would be solar systems, and get into that domain.
Sci-fi.
And of course, it would be all the acquisition of resources from different, and then technology would play a role. And that'd be fun. Axis and Allies, outer space.
Sounds promising as well.
It could be done with
so.
really pretty much the same game mechanics as Axis and Allies.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Instead of cruisers, I mean, you got cruisers, space cruisers.
You have introduced the diplomacy part about moving and allies and everything on War Room, but did you think about bringing in a second level, like the politic background, or let's say scientific background, so that you have beside that war that is going to happen on the main board, that you have a small board like this, and on that board is kind of the politics and the science and the production and everything, so with help markers and everything. I know that War Room has some tables where you can set your resources and you can pin them. I saw that on the pictures, but do you think it is a clever choice to use more than one main board to concentrate on? So
more than one what?
Well, sometimes you have something like a player's help, or you have an own piece of you have an own element that's a book, but let's say that's my player's table. And the main board is in front of me. That's the global aspect. And then I have, let's say, the research or the bonuses from politicians or from any kind of society influence are on my table as well.
I think I understand what you're asking. Let me make this clear and stress this, because I don't think I have. So, Imperial Borders is nothing but diplomacy, and it's military diplomacy, it's diplomatic diplomacy, it is wealth, it is driven, it is a simulation of Europe in 1815, where Napoleon has fallen and the monarchs have been reinstalled, and in fact, Louis XVIII is back on the throne of what was the Republic of France. Now has returned to become the Kingdom of France. Can you imagine to go from a republic to a kingdom? Wow! In your lifetime, what a step backwards, really. And so there is this attitude, this royalist attitude that you take on as a player, to the point where as you're playing this game, and because what you accomplish or do, you are awarded medals of the period. You can put these on because
okay.
And if you are the leading player, you get the big one to wear, and then maybe you have the most cannons, or the biggest navy, or maybe you have the most elite troops, and then maybe you want to influence your smaller neighbors around you, and you wrap them up into an alliance that serves your purpose, or maybe they think that you're serving their purpose. It is wonderful. And then you have the secret simultaneous movement system, which is just so easy, because all you do is draw little lines. You don't even write. You just draw a line. You make an X. Infantry, I don't care which infantry you have. Maybe you got 6 of them here. One of them's got to go up here. This is beautifully simple and elegant. And
everyone gets such a map.
And then your navies, they're just crazy, and you never know what position your turn will be, unless you have that big medal that I showed you, and then you know you can first or anywhere, because that's one of the wonderful things about having that medal is you can decide what position you are in a turn lineup. Or another medal will give you extra dice during combat if you use cannons. Another one would maybe would help you with your ships and your navy.
Yeah. That's what I was talking about. Bonuses on certain weapons, on certain specialized army, armory.
Yeah. You become an elite ship, and that means you roll a cannon die, which is 50% chance hit, versus a regular dice, which is only one position, which is 16%. But if you have an elite ship, well, then you have that much more dice you roll, or elite infantry, or elite cannons, or if you capture enemy cannons, because that's how they used to measure battles back then. Was all right. So you won the battle, but how many enemy cannons did you capture? Is how it was. Success was measured. And I'm also thinking to include in this game for Napoleonic fans, maybe a small scenario where everybody is against Napoleon, and maybe it's a what if, because he did win at Waterloo. If you just wanted to depart from the core game of Imperial Waters, somebody could play France and be Napoleon.
Alternate history, yeah. I think that's a very interesting scenario, because no one made a game about the Vienna Congress and its
no one has
results.
That I can see, yeah.
And I think it's a clever choice.
See,
but
the point is, what makes the Congress of Vienna interesting to me is that they are redrawing the border lines of Europe.
Like in Versailles in 1919. So same thing.
Yes, exactly. They were a little bit more generous in Congress than Versailles, but yeah. Oh, and by the way, this Congress of Vienna, I mean, it pretty much maintained a peace in Europe for 100 years, up until 1914. So
that's
from
the point
go ahead.
That's the point I was that's contradicting a bit of Wargame, because if you're doing a Congress in 1815 and all the monarchies are happy with it, and France is a monarchy again before it became at the end of the 19th century a republic again, is it difficult to do a Wargame starting 1815, having peace most of the time, except the fighting in 1870 and 1850 and so.
Here's the answer to your question. I have this chart, and what this is it's updated because we have a phase in the game which is called the Congress of Vienna, where we all sit down, we stop rolling dice, we look at each other, and we start talking. Hey, listen, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. And somebody's saying, hey, I need this, I need that, I don't know that. So there's this diplomacy going on. But people are getting points, and they could win the war. They could win this game without necessarily conquering
going to war.
Europe. Whoever has a certain advantage after the fifth round, and has 2 more points than his closest competitor, will win the game. And so everybody's trying to stop you from becoming that successful player. So, all right, I'm getting into the weeds here. Sorry.
Yeah, the problem with diplomacy is always, if you see someone's reaching the 18 cities limits, everybody's jumping on him, and he cannot find enough allies with 7 players. So it's a game which turns out to be without any end, because it's close to impossible to reach it with players who are not jealous about you taking away the victory. If they see you have 15 cities or 16 and you need just 2 more. And I think that was always an issue with diplomacy, because I liked the game itself, but the problem was always if there was a clear leader, he was getting bumped from every side.
And the adjudication. I always found the adjudication in the game of diplomacy was just too complicated. I thought it could be simplified. By the way, I worked on diplomacy. I worked on diplomacy while I worked at Hasbro. I made the latest version of it some years back, and also I did the latest version of Risk. So how about that?
Risk Factions is from you?
The Risk of, what was it, 40th anniversary or 50th with the metal pieces, that was all me.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know about that. So you
I worked on, and then I worked on Trivia Pursuit. I was with the Trivia Pursuit question writers in Los Angeles the night before the earthquake that hit Los Angeles how many years ago?
1994.
That was a big one. And I was with them that Saturday, and I took off that morning. I took off that Saturday morning, and the earthquake hit. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I just missed it and left my good friends, my Trivial Pursuit friends, who are all Canadian, in Los Angeles writing Trivial Pursuit questions because we wanted to meet some or deal with some movie stars in LA. That was a fun time.
Okay, that's a totally different experience.
and I'll tell you another the crazy life and wonderful life I've had as a game designer working for corporate America game companies. I was working on a project for Clue, or I think you call it Cluedo in Europe.
Cluedo, yeah.
And we had to go to England, and we every day we had to fly up to Scotland to this old castle, and we were in there using that as the backdrop for the mystery mansion or the terrible place that Mr. Body was. And so we had to fly up there every day. So I got to know the pilot, and I asked him if we could fly, if I could rent his plane with him and fly to Normandy to the D-Day invasion beaches. And so we did, and we flew, and we were at 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 feet in a small airplane. I could see the entire D-Day beach range from Utah all the way to Omaha and Juneau all the way down up to Le Havre, and all in one take, and it gave me a certain perspective and a scope on the size of that event, and it was just a wonderful experience. And we flew over exactly the same route as a fighter plane would have flown had it left from Plymouth or the London area as it made its way to Normandy. Just another great experience in my game design career.
Wow.
I was very lucky. I suggest to any young person that they find themselves a career and a job that they would do it for nothing. And if they get that pleasure where they could do that kind of work and not be paid for it, well, that's the kind of work they want to do for the rest of their life and get paid for it.
Yeah, you were definitely lucky to have that chance, and you have the talent to do so. Did you have the parachute with you when you were flying over the beaches of Omaha?
No, there was one scary moment. He flew intentionally into this little black cloud. It was the only cloud in the sky, and he flew right into it, and it tossed us all over the cockpit. Scared the hell out of me, and but it all added to the excitement of the whole thing.
That sounds like a wonderful story.
And we could see what do you call them? Bunkhouses. All the fortifications that are still there so many years later. It was fun.
Atlantikwall, yeah. Well, I have because we were coming from diplomacy. We have played a game during the last 2 years, Alexander. It was called Churchill from Mark Herman, and he had a very interesting negotiation tactic with defeating the Axis as the three powers of the USSR, USA, and UK, and you'll have to become the superior nation after World War II. So the main goal was to cooperate and kill the Axis and win the game by unconditional surrender, but you'll have to prepare to be the best post-war nation. And so you had an effect that you had your own interests. The British wanted to save their colonies. The US wanted some influence in Pacific and in Europe, and the same way the USSR handled it. And I think that was a very interesting mechanic for negotiation. I'm really looking forward to see War Room or Imperial Borders played in my house, to have an alternative to that kind of very elegant solution I have played lately. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Good.
Do you?
Yeah.
A thing about that game, Churchill, or some other games, is that they are using cards, and there's the genre of the war-driven card games. The most card-driven war games. Sorry, the most well-known should be Twilight Struggle, which was designed around the Cold War. So, did you experiment with that technique, or are you planning to use it in some kind of ways? And what kind of pros and cons do you see using those elements? Because I like those games, but there are kind of disadvantages given because of the cards as well.
Yeah, I see the value of card games in that way, and but I don't know enough about them, and I really don't have enough time to go there, and I'll tell you why. Like everyone, I only have so much time, and I have to use my time wisely, and where my strengths lie is where I have to go. If it's in the realm of historic World War II, because I have a following, that's where I have to spend my time. I could have an intellectual curiosity, a certain type of game mechanics that I would explore, but I would not go deep into them. I would just get a notion, because my time is too precious to be trying to rediscover new directions, especially at my age. I think you understand what I'm saying. I'm not going to. I can't afford the luxury of trying trying new stuff that is far from my realm. I got to give what my fan base, and I do have one, and the Kickstarter will contest to that. I got to give them what they're expecting, and that's where I got to spend my time and effort.
Yeah, it's understandable as well. Yeah.
Well, and your games have a high level of quality, so I can understand the way of your explanation very well. So, but I'm like, when I talk about Axis and Allies, and when it was in the 80s or 90s, it was like, wow, that's a fresh game. It brings risks to another level, and then it always tops itself. And since 1996, Wargaming is kind of having a new direction or new subgenre, like the card-driven war games. And that's why I was asking, because I think the technique is kind of no one has combined it really with dice or with any kind of gaming you do. Normally they are about majorities, or they are about point-to-point movement, but the dynamic you have in your games, and like I said, I do not know the latest version of your war games, but that the dynamic feels different. It brings a lot of flavor because you have historical events, and you have a lot of freedom how to use your actions, and they are always kind of, you need more. But if you look at a game, and I say it objectively, I am having fun with those games, but objectively, not a lot of things are happening on those maps. And that's different to your games, because when I play 2 rounds of Axis and Allies or War Room or Imperial Borders, that's the same like you have described it now. There's movement, there's chaotic, there's always some kind of surprise element, there's a luck element. And no one has combined this with a more, I would say, diplomatic, slow-paced, card-driven war games. And I think that's a combination that would work out very well for wargamers, not only for a small niche, because I think the people who love Larry Harris games also enjoy, most of them, the other genre which has developed during the past 25 years. So that's why I was asking about it, but I can absolutely understand your point. And with the hidden movement, you already have a new kind of mechanic which I haven't heard about before.
I'm not afraid of new mechanics. I just don't want to get into, a card game. That's a whole other category. I think in categories, and card games are a whole nother category. I would do an actionalized card game because maybe my fans that would address my concerns about leaving or losing my fan base or not addressing my fan base.
I think that's impossible after so many years. And
it's got to have something to do with World War II or war or historic simulation. And that could be done with a card game. I could come up with an actionalized card game. In fact, I have done actionalized card games, but I haven't done anything with them because I have bigger fish to fry, is the American expression. Yeah. I have bigger fish to fry, so I don't go into war games.
Yeah, time is limited. I understand that completely.
Yeah, it's really limited. Jesus, I can't believe how old I am and how fast these years have gone by. And jeez, I'm a prime target for Corona here because I'm my age.
That's why you have all the time talking to us.
That's why I spend my life in my basement here.
Luckily, you have your basement, yeah. And unfortunately, we can see your background in the meantime. It's pretty clear.
Oh, yeah?
So if you want to,
yeah.
So if you like to share a treasure of
I saw that. For some weird reason, it cleared up. So this is there's my little swastika there, and then of course my Allied flags.
You're lucky that you're not in Germany because otherwise people would storm your house.
That's a real. That was captured. I bought that in a what do you call it? Army Navy store, and it's a real Nazi flag. Somebody brought it back from Europe at the turn of the war. This is Axis and Allies, the miniatures. I don't know if you can see that or if they're being seen.
They're
interested.
You can see them, yeah.
And then there's my wall of shame there, or fame, all the Axis and Allies games. I don't know if you're actually
and I can see on the round table a setup of the war room.
That's my war room, and of course that's what we call a lazy Susan board. In other words, it just moves, it turns, rotates.
Okay.
And then then there's Imperial Borders from a safe distance. I can show it to you from here.
We won't do copyright infringements.
So. Yeah, so this is where I hang out and I love what I do, and
this is a great environment.
Yeah, it really is. I'm very lucky.
So how deep are you into mathematics? Because all those games
mathematics,
calculation.
It's all math. It's all calculus. It's the fastest and easiest way to grasp these different games. There's got to be a strong balance or ratio or numeric values that go into all these games. I'm not a great mathematician, but I do deal with complex calculus very comfortably, which makes it easy for me to deal with or design. Makes it easier for me to design these games. I think that's a strength I have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a mathematician by any means, but calculus, yeah.
You need it, yeah. And you said Imperial Wargames. I saw a video which came out in 2019 and the second part of 2019. How much play rounds did you have already there for play testing, and when do you think it will hit stores, or when do you think it will hit Kickstarter?
I've been recently most of this week and for the last since I've been back from back to the States this year. I'm writing rules for Imperial Borders, and that's taking time, and I want them to be great rules. It's important that rules are great, and that a lot of time be spent on them, and that they be many editions or versions. So we're only on about the 4th or 5th version of the rules at this point, and there'll be a lot more, and probably so. When the game rules are done and production is lined up, and then the Kickstarter is done, and then we make the manufacturing in China, if we still want to do business in China anymore. Because, man, that got really complicated with War Room. We almost ended up with a 25% tariff. And then we were usually in War Room. We were using nationalist Chinese flags, Chiang Kai-shek's flags, and of course now China is just the Chinese Communist Party, and they're becoming very proud, and very political in terms of they don't like the idea that one of their factories is printing nationalist flags. Historically accurate nationalist flags. So we were told, and unofficial, but very clearly, that we could experience customs problems because it's seen as the nationalist flag is seen as a terrorist group, and that's Formosa, that's Taiwan, terrorist group. I don't think so. But anyway, and it could have screwed up our whole operation. So we had to create a Chinese flag that's not Chinese and not historically accurate, just so that we wouldn't be harassed at customs. And then we had to print up and give out stickers with the real historic Chinese flag. So we gave that with each game we sold so that people could update their flags. And that makes us very suspicious about should we do any more work in China because of the political implications, the possible trade wars, the politics of internal China. China's not as cheap as it used to be, or as inexpensive as it used to be. So
you must produce in Taiwan, so then you can use Chiang Kai-shek.
I would love to do it in the United States, but it's cost prohibitive. Labor is expensive here, and rightfully so. But so we don't know where we're going to publish our next game. Maybe Vietnam.
Going back to the roots.
Full circle.
One thing that is eye-popping to me is that your War Room doesn't have any kind of accolades or kind of prizes you won for your astonishing career, because I'm pretty sure that you won something, and I saw that there's some kind of Hall of Fame for board gaming, and there's like 40 to 50 games announced in Wikipedia which are inside of that, and Axis and Allies is one of those games, and your name is kind of dropped for a lot of prizes, but as I can see on your webcam, there are no prizes which come to my eye. Where do you keep them?
No, well, you just didn't see them. They're there. See, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's about 6 little statuettes and.
Oh, little.
well, how big you want them to be? I mean, Damn, I'll show you one. All right.
That's your Oscar. So.
Right, yeah, see my Oscar here. So, my Oscar. This is Axis and Allies Pacific Origins Award. Best historical board game for 2001. There you go. How's that? You like that? Huh? Is that big enough for you?
Yeah, that's big enough.
That's one of about 5 of these. So there, yeah. I got them.
How do prize you were invited for prize ceremonies, and how does that feel for you? Because you said it feels strange to be a prom, and on those nights you are one of the most important people on stage, and you are really a prom on those nights for everybody in the house. So can you share your thoughts or emotions on
that? My thoughts are not what you're probably expecting. My thoughts are, I actually see people, and you're no exception, who see me as some kind of celebrity or special person. I don't see that in myself, and I have no false illusions of what grandeur or greatness is. I know who I am, and I don't deserve any particular. I like my games, buy them. That's cool. I'm all for that. I'm certainly not a better person or an amazing person. I am good looking, and I know that.
Well,
I have my strengths, but I have my weaknesses. It's funny how I have resisted becoming celebrity. I get no kick out of that. I do recognize that being a celebrity could be a marketing asset and a business asset. And so I have no illusions about that it could help me on Kickstarter to be known, a celebrity of sorts. I'll play that card if it works, but in my heart, I have no false illusions. I haven't got caught up in being a celebrity at all.
And did you ever have fan posts? Because you said people recognize you on streets, people might recognize you in a ceremony, but what about people writing you letters back in the days when there was no email?
I used to get a lot of letters, especially when Axe and Allies came out, and because people would write not so much to me, but they would write directly to Milton Bradley, and then Milton Bradley would forward the letters to me. There was a lot of fan letters. It was fascinating to see, and people would I could see that people were really passionate with Axe and Allies. That was a nice experience.
Mm-hmm. So now you were talking about your age and your decades of being in the business. I think you wouldn't change anything for becoming a board game designer again if you would do the same choices, or would you do another profession if you are 20 years old?
I wanted to be a pilot. I actually am a pilot. I used to fly my own ultralight and things like that, but a professional pilot would be, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. Who didn't? We all wanted to be astronauts back then. Or I wanted to be Alexander the Great or Napoleon or one of those kind of guys, but history didn't smile on me. And so I settled to be a game designer. There you are. And I'm known as a military or historical board game designer, but I design games in every category, for small girls to teenagers to family, every category. I'm a professional game designer.
Yeah, I know. 200 board games include a whole variety of things. So
it's probably more than 200 at this point, but yeah. A lot more than 200. Yeah.
So is there a game you can include or exclude wargaming? You want to come back as a revised version of one of your classic games, or where you have a new spin to bring some new excitement in it?
Yeah.
You could name any product. So
like broadsides and boarding parties, for example.
That's funny. Broadsides and boarding parties. I always think about that. No, Conquest of the Empire. I could redo that. I might even redo that. That might get redone. And then there's this bomber game I want to do. That's kind of special. I'll talk more about that as it develops. A bunch of B-17s. We're all flying in a B-17. We all have certain
like a bomber crew. That's interesting.
Yes, or maybe I'll tell you more about it at some point.
If you have the chance to talk to you again, I will do so, because there will be a lot of questions appearing after we have played War Room.
Maybe, yeah.
No problem. It's been fun talking to you.
Let's say something about one kind of rumor I've read on the internet, and I was a bit irritated by it. It's like this: there was a comment like, if World War I's 1914 of Axis and Allies is sold out, there won't be any reprint. Do you think about doing a revised version, or do you think there might be a reprint in some years, or do you think that comment stands like, well, it is like it is?
I can't depend on my publishers to.
It depends on the publisher. Okay, that's fine.
But I've decided I'm not going to wait for them. I will pursue independently of. Oh, if I want to do a game, I'm just going to do it. On Kickstarter, because I can do it. I have that amazing ability in history. Who the hell has such a wonderful opportunity as to be their own publisher like this, to raise money, crowdfunding, and then to have the game manufactured, and then to actually sell it and make a living. That and all of that's done from my basement. I don't own a big warehouse. I don't own a big factory, and it's. Individuals are very powerful people now with these things called computers and the web. We can do amazing things if we stop and think about it.
And in May you will turn 72 years old. So I know that's I was talking to you now for over 2 hours, and it doesn't feel like you are could be my granddad from the age point of view, because when my real grandpa was 72, he couldn't do much more than like watching television and reading the newspaper, and that's it. And you seem to be very vital. But how long do you plan to develop new games? How long do you plan to focus on work, continuing all of that, because it's your passion, it's in you? But is it like, okay, even when I love it, I will step down with 75, or my wife or my kids tell me all the time, please care about yourself. It's enough when you are in your basement twice a week, not 7 days a week or 6 days a week.
No, I go to the Caribbean. 3 months a year. I work from there because I can, just like I can work from here. It's designing games is the way I'd like to spend my time. I find that to be rewarding. I don't ever find it to be unpleasant or a task that I have to do. I can take my time now and do the stuff that interests me and do it well without pressure. And so that's what I'm doing right now, and I can do that until either I'm physically or mentally handicapped. There's nothing stopping me. Yeah, I'm not doing something where I have to go dig a hole, and I'm too old to exert that kind of energy. All I do is type.
So you could imagine being the Clint Eastwood of board gaming, continuing all the time and getting better with the age. He
doesn't die away, does he? Clint Eastwood.
I didn't say Kirk Douglas because he died lately, and he didn't do something for a few decades. But Clint Eastwood is still active as a businessman, as an actor, as a director. And he brought out some of his best movies when he was kind of reaching an age where you say, okay, other people are in a situation where they need help from hospital or something, and he's still active and loves what he's doing. So that's why I made up the comparison.
Yeah, well, I don't mind the comparisons. That's good. That's fine. Clint Eastwood, except except he's a badass Republican, but that's all right.
Well, we didn't talk about politics.
Yeah, you asked me earlier a game I'd like to do. I'd like to do Cold War, Eastern Front, 1946. Yeah, Russia, NATO.
Alternate history.
I think I would be an interesting game. I think I would leave the hydrogen bomb and the mutually assured destruction aspects of that in the game, and it would be more about a war of proxies in third world countries. I'd like to have it resemble the world that I grew up in, frankly, because I grew up in the Cold War, and it was a real competition between two forms of government and two economic systems. It was an exciting time. The United States thrives when it has strong competition. So I can't wait for China, which is almost there, to really become a competitor, so we can show off once again how great we are.
Well, you need another man on the top, so it might work out with competition.
Yeah, no. The United States thrives on competition. We need some competition.
So if you need a name for your Cold War game, call it Iron Curtain. And if you use the name, just send me a copy.
Yeah. Iron Curtain.
Yeah, that's from Churchill, and I think that's a good thing to use. So
no, I know it's from Churchill, but you know what? I don't think it's as good as 1946. If you saw a game,
the same.
If you saw a game in 1946, you say, is this an extension of World War II or is the beginning of the Cold War? In fact, we should go to probably 1948. I don't know. There has to be. When did they do their hydrogen bomb? I think it was 47, 46, something like that.
Yeah, it must be CNC, like Cold Curtain or something.
Iron Curtain. It sounds like a spy game. No. 1946. I get it. And if a game of 1946 by Larry Harris, I think people would get that right away. That might happen. That might be an extension of War Room. Might be that. That could happen. Yep.
I really look forward to this. What about the 21st?
I'm not going to call it.
Yeah, just let it sink. Someone had luck with X's and L's as well. What about doing a game about terrorism, 21st century? Or what about a game like politics? It's like 1960, Making of the President as a game. You could do a game which I think is very attractive to the Americans as well, is about the elections of Bush and Gore, the 2000s. So that's kind of historical, but I think going into politics is a. I think if you're doing it 2010 and 2020, it's a minefield. But if you're going a bit back to the 90s or 2000s, I think there are interesting topics as well.
Who buys this game? Who buys this game you're talking about? The Al Gore and Bush.
Well, I think Al Gore isn't too colorful, but if you go back to Clinton against Bush or something like this, people will buy this because things like 1960, Making of the President, have a remarkable high number for GMT game and a fan base which is pretty much there. So I'm happy if you're designing war games for the rest of your life, and I can enjoy them. But if you're doing some steps out of the war game box, I think politics is an interesting business field as well. Because have a look at 1960 Making of the President, and you see that the numbers, and we do not have the best access as interviewers, reporters, amateurs who are doing a podcast, but you might have some sources in the industry which can give you a feedback about political games. And I think Labyrinth, the War on Terror game, is like top 5 sold game of GMT. So there is a potential purchase base given. It's not a smash it like a World War II game, of course, but it's a solid base, I guess. That's an amateur view. I could be completely wrong, but that's my impression.
It's what's the wisest way for me to spend my time and energy?
Yeah, of course.
And to suddenly find myself doing political games instead of global war games, maybe not the best choice.
Well, if you're having 1946, you need some politics because the world wasn't that.
I don't know. It could very well be. Yeah, and that's the beauty of Imperial Borders. It's military and politics, and a nice blend of both, salt and pepper going on together there, just in the right combination. Yeah, I dig it. Yeah.
Well, any questions left on your side, Sasha or Alexander?
I'm just listening in excitement, and I enjoy the stories Mr. Harris shared with us. I don't have any questions left at the moment.
Nope. Do you have any questions left on us?
Well, only a statement, and that is, as you try to put this together, good luck with that, by the way. I don't know.
It's a horror show. It will need months. I'm sure it will be released in summer or something like this.
If you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'd be glad to answer you or assist you in your efforts here to some extent. I don't have a lot of time. I'm very busy, but I'd be happy to have quick conversations with you guys anytime in your effort to put this together. And thank you very much for your interest. And it's been fun talking to three young German men who live far from me but know me so well. That's kind of fascinating. Thank you.
I wasn't called young for some time, but it was really a pleasure to have you on the
show. Many thanks. Many thanks for that conversation, Mr. Harris. It was really great and enjoyable.
You think so? Okay. I hope
really.
So. All right.
I had 3.5 hours passed the same way, like when you look on the clock and say, well, it's turn 4 in Axis and Allies, and we have already played 3.5 hours. So it felt the same way.
Auf Wiedersehen, how do you say friends?
Freunde.
Kamerad. Auf Wiedersehen, Kamerad.
Comrades.
It's not Kamerad, is it?
Freunde, is it?
Okay, nice talking to you. Again, I'm available to your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.